If you're a fan of action movies, chances are you're familiar with the name Sam Firstenberg. What you may not know is that when he directed his first action movie, Revenge of the Ninja, he had no experience in the genre. He wasn't even supposed to direct the film. Before I get into that, let's go back a few years. In 1981, the Cannon Group released Enter the Ninja, a low-budget martial arts film shot primarily in the Philippines. While this wasn't the first English-language film to have ninjas, that was credited to the Octagon in 1980, Enter the Ninja was the one responsible for popularizing ninjas in the US. The movie was a huge hit for Cannon and sparked a wave of ninja-sploitation that would take over cinemas for the next few years. The original director for Enter the Ninja was Emmett Alston. Menachem Golan, one of the heads of Cannon, saw the dailies for the film and didn't like what he was seeing, so he fired Alston and directed it himself. Now with Enter the Ninja being such a hit, they wanted to make a sequel as quickly as possible. Originally, Golan was going to handle the directing for the sequel, but decided to pass it on to somebody else, and he'd stay on as a producer. With Golan stepping aside, who did they bring on to direct? None other than Emmett Alston, the guy who was fired from the first movie. They wanted to keep the vibe of the series, so they rehired the DP, David Garfinkel, and other members of the crew. Sho Kosugi was a major standout from Enter the Ninja, so they decided to make a movie that revolved around him. Right away, this made it so the movie wouldn't be a sequel, since his character was killed in the first movie, which changed this to more of a spiritual sequel. They had a script, but Golan admitted it wasn't very good. It didn't matter though. He said, "I have $700,000 and I want a ninja movie." He had one stipulation. Since the last film took place in the Philippines, he wanted this one to take place in America. The script was about a ninja who goes to America and gets double-crossed, so he kills everyone who crossed him. They called it Revenge of the Ninja. While working in pre-production, they had almost all the elements in place to get the film underway. Although, once again, Alston butted heads with Golan, who fired him from the production. This left the film without a director, since Golan didn't want to take over again. Now without a director, they started looking for someone who could do action. Golan met with Sam Firstenberg, who had been in the industry since the 70s. While he had a decent amount of experience under his belt, he had mostly worked on dramas. Firstenberg worked with Golan on a few movies in the 70s, like Operation Thunderbolt and Diamonds. Golan was considering him for the job and asked him a simple question: "Can you direct action?" Even though the director had no experience in that area, he did what most of us would do. He said, "Of course I can direct action." Being that this was back in the day when movies would have lengthy pre-production periods, he figured he'd take the time to surround himself with people who were experienced with action, and he'd learn from them. He already had Sho Kosugi on board, who was a wealth of information about the subject. Firstenberg knew nothing about martial arts aside from the Akira Kurosawa samurai movies he watched growing up. Firstenberg told Kosugi he knew nothing about ninjas, so the actor told him a variety of books to read that would help him to understand. He saw the script and agreed it wasn't very good. So he worked with a writer, James Silk, to help fine-tune and improve it. Firstenberg wanted the movie to be huge on action. He felt most action movies had too much story and not enough action. He wanted Revenge of the Ninja to be at least 50% action. Golan agreed. If you want to make an action movie, you deliver action. You give the audience the food they like. While the script was being worked on in LA, the director was looking for a proper stunt coordinator. He sent a copy of the current script to a young stunt coordinator, Stephen Lambert. Lambert read it, but whenever he got to an action sequence, the pages were blank. He spoke to Firstenberg, who told him he'd need his expertise, along with actor Sho Kosugi, to help fill in the action sequences. Lambert was ecstatic. To him, this was like being a kid in a candy store. He could design action sequences to be whatever he wanted, instead of whatever he was told to do. He immediately took the job. Lambert had been training in martial arts since he was 11, and even though he was still relatively young, he was incredibly talented. While working on the script, they were initially considering shooting in LA. However, it was too expensive to film there, so they decided to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. The Utah Film Commission made all sorts of deals with Cannon to entice them into filming there. Sho Kosugi had been in movies before, but mostly small, uncredited parts. Enter the Ninja was his first film with Cannon, and Revenge of the Ninja was his first lead. He was very excited. Kosugi was a master of martial arts, and by 1974, he had over 663 trophies from various competitions. However, getting the lead in Revenge of the Ninja was a lifelong dream of his. He always wanted to be an actor. When he was younger, he went to acting school, and within 6 months, he was kicked out. His teacher said, "I don't think you're going to be a star." He never gave up, and now here was the lead in a movie that was more or less written for him. Lambert and Kasugi choreographed all the fights for the film. Lambert spent 2 weeks working with some of the extras, but mainly with the villain Arthur Roberts. He tried to train him as best he could, but he really wasn't a physical actor. They said he was somewhat awkward in the ninja outfit, which is why most of the time if you see the evil ninja, it's more than likely Lambert wearing the suit. Adding the mask made it easier to hide his identity, since they don't have to worry about the actor's face. The problem with the mask was, Lambert couldn't see out of it, which made the fight scenes even more difficult. For the big fights in the movie, Kasugi insisted that Lambert be the one he fought with. He was incredibly skilled, and the two were able to work very well off each other. This was easy to do, since they just needed to establish the villain was in the outfit, and then since he was wearing the mask, they replaced him with Lambert. They wrote the script to never say where it was taking place. That way they could show a big city, and most would think it was supposed to be New York or Los Angeles. Filming started in July of 1982. The exteriors were Salt Lake City, Utah, and the interiors would mostly be sets. They hired local actress Ashley Farrar to play Cho's assistant Kathy. She didn't have any martial arts training, but was good with choreography, so they taught her 3 to 4 steps at a time, and she did the moves like a dance sequence. For Cho's son in the movie, they hired his oldest son, Kane. Even though Kane was still a child, his father had been training him in martial arts pretty much since birth. Lieutenant Dime was played by actor Virgil Fry. He was a former Golden Gloves boxing champion, and now was also the father of Salil Moon Fry, better known as Punky Brewster. Lambert's friend Keith Vitale was Dave Hatcher, another skilled martial artist. He was the world karate champion and U.S. national karate champion for 3 consecutive years, from 1978 to 1980, and just recently starred in his first movie, Force 5. Professor Turo Tanaka was the sumo assistant. He was an ex-WWF professional wrestler who moved on to acting in the early 80s. Chief was Don Shanks, another martial arts master. Because of his unique look and talent, he was a staple in movies and television. I mentioned him a few months back in the TV show The Master. He worked with Kasugi and Lambert to choreograph his fight scenes, and was also hired to be the safety guide for the film. Sometimes Shanks also played the masked ninja. Many of the weapons in the film were from Cho's collection. They also hired a guy who made specific prop weapons out of aluminum. Sho Kasugi had a company that made ninja outfits, and they sold them to Canon for use in the film. Since the film was relatively low budget, they had to do many of the stunts for real. That meant when you saw someone jumping on top of a van or some other insane stunt, there were no wires or other equipment. The thieves were all stuntmen. There were so many stunts involved, it took a full week to shoot the van chase sequence. When Cho's on top of the roof of the van, he's strapped in with wires for his safety. The stuntman, on the other hand, wasn't. When the stuntman's being dragged behind the van, he's wearing catcher's pads under his pants. They wanted this scene to show that Cho was bigger than life, that a ninja could chase down a van on foot. Later in the film, there was an action sequence where Cho fights a gang in a playground. The bad guys were an intentional goof on the village people. There was one character they called the Rhinestone Cowboy. While getting ready for the scene, Lambert asked, "Have you decided who's going to play the cowboy?" The director and Kasugi both pointed at him. Firstenberg wanted the ending to be memorable, so for the big final fight, they structured it to be the entire third act. The idea of the high-rise ending came from Jim Silk. Cho would head to the building and go floor by floor until finally facing off against the evil ninja on the roof. One day they were getting ready to do a scene where a ninja climbs across a building on a wire. The sun was setting, and they didn't have much time left to film. Lambert wanted to test the wires with sandbags, but doing so would have slowed things down. One of the producers who was on set that day told him to hurry up. He almost didn't test it, but Don Shanks stopped him and told him to test it to be sure. He did, and the wire snapped, causing the sandbags to fall, which would have killed Lambert. He apologized, and ever since then, he always made sure to test a life-threatening stunt before doing it. They had an airbag outside the building for one of the stunts, and Firstenberg wanted to jump out the 4th floor window and land on it. He thought it would be easy and fun, which was a mistake. He landed on it wrong, and he said it was not pleasant. The roof fight sequence took 10 days to film. The blood spray was an homage to a Kurosawa movie. Canon was very hands-off with the production. During the 8 weeks of filming in Salt Lake City, they hardly ever bothered them. After principal filming ended, they did shoot some second unit on Wilshire Boulevard to help establish that this was supposed to be LA and not Salt Lake City. They showed the footage to Golan, who said it was a mess. The movie starts with Cho in America, and he felt there needed to be something more to establish why he was there and his relationship with Braden. Golan thought Cho's motivation was unclear. What happened in Japan to make him flee to the US and vow not to fight again? None of this was clarified in the original cut. He felt that as it was now, it made no sense, and they had to do some serious reworking in order to give it purpose. Golan gave them funding to have an extra week of shooting in LA. They scripted a new beginning, where Cho's family gets killed by ninjas in his home, which causes him to flee to America. For the new opening, they found a location in LA that looked like a traditional garden in Japan. The little kid that was killed in the beginning was Cho's other son, Shane. For the additional ninjas, they needed trained martial artists. They didn't need them to act, they just needed them to do some moves and then get killed. For the extra ninjas, Kasugi brought in some students from his dojo. Although if a scene called for more than that, stunt coordinator Steve Lambert would play the part. Their faces were always covered, so he could play multiple ninjas, and the audience wouldn't know the difference. The opening took 4 days to shoot. With the additional time, they filmed some more action to add to the film and help establish some things better. They added the scene where Kane fights the kids. The bullies that Kane fights were all white belts from a local karate school. They also added some scenes of cops fighting with the ninjas in the halls in the main building. Filming ended late in the summer of 1982. They moved into post and edited the film to a rough cut that ran about 2 hours long. Canon's rule was that films must be 90 minutes to maximize their views per day. 95 minutes was pushing it, but they allowed it if they felt the movie was good enough. The rough cut leaned a little too much into philosophical ideas and drama, which Golan didn't care for. After some discussion, they trimmed it down to a little over 90 minutes. When they sent the film out for a rating, it came back with an X for violence. They had to make some trims here and there, but the biggest one was when Shane gets killed in the beginning. That had to be drastically reduced. They still sent it back numerous times before finally getting an R. When they finally had their R-rated cut, the film clocked in exactly at 90 minutes. MGM liked the movie, so they bought the distribution rights. This was a big deal, as it was the first Cannon film picked up by MGM, the first of many. The movie opened on September 16, 1983, and was #1 in many of the major cities. Audiences loved it, and Cannon saw the demand for more ninja movies. They made this movie for adults, but were surprised that it ended up being adored by teenagers. This inspired waves of American teens to start taking karate classes, as well as buying things like nunchucks and throwing stars. After this, Cannon made Ninja 3: The Domination to finish out the Ninja trilogy, and its only connection was Sho Kasugi, who played 3 different characters across the 3 films. Ninja fever was everywhere, and theaters were getting overloaded with ninja movies. Even TV shows like The Master, which hired a few actors from Revenge of the Ninja, like Sho Kasugi and Ashley Ferrer. Firstenberg said there wasn't much difference between directing action and directing dance, which is what led him to later directing Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. Despite not knowing how to direct action prior to Revenge of the Ninja, Firstenberg became the go-to guy for action movies, and made movies like Avenging Force, Cyborg Cop, and of course that other ninja franchise for Cannon, American Ninja. Revenge of the Ninja also made Sho Kasugi a star. It's rumored that he was the first Asian actor to get $1 million as his salary for a movie. He continued acting and working as a stunt coordinator on numerous films and TV shows. Kane grew up and followed in his father's footsteps to be in ninja movies. He was Ryu in DOA, and Nakabara in Ninja Shadow of a Tear. Frustrated by being fired off 2 ninja movies, Emmett Alston wrote and directed 9 Deaths of the Ninja in 1985. The movie starred Sho Kasugi and was meant as a parody to the wave of ninja movies out there. Revenge of the Ninja is hands down one of the best canon ninja films out there, and there were indeed a lot. I'm torn if I like Ninja 3 better, but it's a tough call. They're both great in their own ways. Revenge of the Ninja is just awesome, with its non-stop action and outstanding fights. That entire end sequence is just incredible. Ninja 3 is great with its outlandish fantasy story, and while not as action-packed as Revenge of the Ninja, it makes up for it with sequences like Ninja on a golf course. Out of the Ninja trilogy, this was the one that satisfied Kasugi the most. Sam Firstenberg's a director who may not have initially wanted to, but has become synonymous with action. He just has the right eye for the medium, and understands that in order to be the best, he learned from the best. Instead of trying to hide poorly constructed action sequences with shaky cam and editing, he let Lambert and Kasugi do what they do best. He knew whatever he could come up with would not be anywhere near as good as what they'd construct. They each knew their strengths and limitations, so they were able to play off them accordingly, which made for some of the most excellent action scenes you'd ever see in an American-produced ninja movie. Revenge of the Ninja is awesome. Not only did it start Firstenberg on the road to making a series of amazing action films, it put Sho Kosugi on the map, and led to one of my all-time favorite ninja movies, Pray for Death.
I'm opening up a new gallery tomorrow. I have no time.